Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our live webinar. We've got a treat for you. My name is Jeff Reichard. I am the Vice President of Compliance and Public Sector Strategy on Veeam's product strategy team. If you dial in, you've seen a lot of my colleagues on here, usually every Monday and Friday. But I'm not joined today by another Veeamer. I am instead joined by Manu Singh of Cowbell Cyber. And Manu, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. First of all, I'm glad to be here, and thank you to Veeam and to your team for having me. So I'm Manu Singh. I'm the Director of Risk Engineering here at Cowbell.
Fantastic. So, Manu, it's been very interesting talking with you, getting prepared for this show. And for those of you who have not heard of Cowbell before, you're going to be hearing about it. But Cowbell Cyber is a specialized cyber insurance firm that works a lot with their customers to make sure that their customers are insurable, that their security posture is improved. And Manu brings some unique qualifications to the role of Director of Risk Engineering. So Manu, why don't you walk us through your background and how you came to Cowbell Cyber?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeff. So just a little bit about my background. I've held various information security roles both within and outside of the insurance industry. So prior to Cowbell, I served as a security intelligence manager for a privately owned top 5 consumer packaged goods corporation within their security center of excellence. I've worked with other insurtechs serving in underwriting roles and externally facing cyber risk consulting roles as well. In addition, I've also worked at a London specialty insurance company on their breach response services team, helping clients manage their cybersecurity risk mitigation efforts. I also hold a jointly offered executive master's degree from NYU School of Law and also from NYU Tandon School of Engineering with a focus in cybersecurity risk and strategy, and also a bachelor's degree from Temple University Fox School of Business with a focus in risk management and insurance.
So if I was starting up a company that specializes in both insurance and risk management and cybersecurity, you would certainly come to my attention to run the risk management function there. It sounds like you've landed in exactly the right spot. What I'd like to dig into a little bit more is you run Cowbell's risk engineering team. Can you talk us through sort of what's part of that function? What is risk engineering at Cowbell Cyber?
Yeah, absolutely. And, just to back up, coming to Cowbell, working for an insurance company that's founded by cybersecurity professionals, insurtechs, they are innovative with their approach to measuring cyber risk of organizations. So they tend to do a much better job of assessing controls and aggregating large amounts of data to better determine what is actually at risk. So this is why I wanted to get back into the insurtech space. It provides true value for policyholders. So one of the key differentiators includes my function. So I am the director of risk engineering at Cowbell Cyber. So that entails assisting policyholders through our continuous risk assessment process. So this includes understanding our Cowbell Cyber platform. How are we rating insureds on various cybersecurity domains? We call these our Cowbell factors, and then gaining deeper insight on insured environments, understanding the AI machine learning scans used to develop insights and recommendations, as well as any impact of security awareness training for employees. So my function ultimately focuses on how the organization can really reduce their risk, the frequency and severity of cyber incidents and data breaches. As far as the risk engineering function, we are a team of security professionals. So our goal is to, again, reduce the frequency and severity there for the policyholder. So we'll do this we'll meet with the organization's IT or security teams and then determine whether their security program is strong, if it has any gaps, or if it's something we can work towards hardening their vulnerabilities that we might identify through security controls and security best practices. So this it's accomplished by performing an assessment from our scans. So we're identifying high severity vulnerabilities, whether it's something our scans pick up on, or if it's a gap we may identify on the call with the insured while we're running through their security initiatives. And on those one-on-one calls, the insured would meet with risk engineering, and then we would also meet with their security teams, and just we'll look to cover everything from high-level common security controls to doing a deeper dive on network segmentation, on firewall rules, which cybersecurity policies they've implemented, and even going into frameworks which may follow the NIST cybersecurity framework or the CIS framework. So these calls really help us paint a complete picture of their cybersecurity posture, and then gives them an opportunity to inform us of strong measures that they've taken to reduce their exposure to a cyber event. So that's really what the risk engineering function is. It's our ability to partner with the insured to help reduce their risk.
That is absolutely fantastic. And interestingly, and I know you and I have talked about the state of the cyber insurance market now worldwide, we have folks who have dialed in from lots of different places to listen to today's talk. So, Mark, why don't you walk us through where we have people dialed in from now? Let's take a look. It looks like we have here in the United States, we have Texas, we have Georgia, we have Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, where you are, and Manu, and Connecticut, where I am. We also have Mexico dialed in. And what about other locations? Looks like that's it for right now. Okay, good stuff. We will keep adding people as we go along, but Manu, I want to dig into more what you're talking about, because it's really interesting. What you're describing is at Cowbell is basically a fusion between being an insurance company and being a security consulting firm, and rolling those two things into one. We've talked about the kind of issues that traditional insurance companies are running into trying to insure cyber nowadays because of the threat of ransomware, because of the losses that more traditional old school insurance companies are running into. Why don't you walk us through a little bit, sort of what your insureds are hearing when they go to get a policy, and what that landscape looks like right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So cyber insurance is harder for companies to obtain than it was a year ago. And it's likely going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. So while cyber insurance is becoming more of a must-have coverage for businesses, the explosion of ransomware attacks and cyber and different various cyber attacks, excuse me, it means it's also becoming a higher risk business for insurance carriers. For example, the average ransom payment shot up by 82% from 2020 to 2021. And by the middle of last year, the number of ransomware attacks was up more than 150% over the entirety of 2021. And, this has direct implications for the insurance industry with the uptick in attacks, with the increased payouts. It has meant steeper losses for insurers, and that could lead to a change in appetite in the cyber marketplace. So that's where the insurtech space, and Cowbell in particular, comes in. We know better data can help insurers and reinsurers differentiate the amount of capacity that they provide to an organization, the coverages that they may offer, the terms and conditions within your cyber liability insurance policy, and then also the sublimits and the deductibles that the insurance carrier would set. So gaining as much data about the organization and their cybersecurity program is key to obtaining as much coverage as possible.
That makes sense. And I know at Veeam, for years now, both we and our storage hardware partners, people who offer immutable backups, have been hearing from customers that various kinds of security controls, including immutable backups, and I know we'll dig into the controls you all recommend here in a couple of minutes, but that people are getting asked for those. I've talked with some organizations, Manu, who set aside their own money and basically self-insure because they've had so much difficulty to get cyber insurance. But I also know if you're a regulated entity, a lot of times self-insuring isn't an option. You have to have cyber insurance, and so you have to find a way to get it. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think if you're able to help the carrier identify what controls that you're putting in place, that puts you in a better position to gain that coverage. So a lot of times, we'll meet with our policyholders and I'm sorry, our clients even before they're an actual policyholder. So we'll assess what have they done currently, and then underwriting will also look into the account to identify if there are any concerns, and we'll look to address it before we actually look to insure them. So that puts the client in a position of knowledge, right? They're able to identify, okay, so if we address X, Y, and Z, Cowbell will be ready to take us on as a policyholder because we are reducing our risk of exposure and we're looking like a better risk for the carrier.
That makes a ton of sense. And so I guess when you and I talked about this is the sort of loop, the continuous process that Cowbell goes through with customers. I know that you tend to focus on small and medium enterprises. And I also know from both the conversations I have with customers and from talking with you earlier, there's a huge lack of security professionals in the market right now for any kind of organization. Isn't that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think more and more, market universities, they're starting to realize this, that security professionals are required, and not only in in-house cybersecurity and information security roles, but also in the insurance industry, adapting security professionals to a more traditional insurance role can help an insurance carrier identify exactly what they need to be looking at when they're assessing an account. So, we proactively engage with our customers. So anytime throughout the policy period, our insureds, they may access my function, the risk engineering function. So we understand that this has to be a partnership with the client since cyber risk is dynamic. So meaning, what might not have been a risky practice 6 months ago could possibly be a security threat today. So this is why we encourage our insureds to constantly be engaged in their cybersecurity posture and to continue to strengthen their network and IT infrastructure. We know that SMEs or small to medium-sized enterprises may or may not also have in-house IT and security sophistication. So when we do see that they lack security professionals or IT professionals that could address security risks, that's where our risk engineering function really looks to help the policyholder. But not only our risk engineering function, we have our closed loop risk management process, as you can see right here, where once the submission comes into Cowbell, we're able to quickly assess the account with our data science and our data aggregation, send that over to underwriting to address any coverage concerns or any past claims that the insured may have. And then from there, push it over to risk engineering for us to improve on security controls to reduce their risk. And then also including our claims team to respond in the event that an incident was to occur. So that's our continuous risk assessment process for small to medium-sized organizations. Again, we know that they either have IT sophistication and security sophistication in-house, or they don't, or they're using an MSSP to provide those types of services.
So this is really interesting because one of the objections that I've heard and that one reads about is that obviously if you have insurance, you want the ability to get a claim paid if something goes wrong, and not to have it denied because your security controls are faulty, because you didn't do the things you needed to. It sounds like this kind of partnership makes it the case that more often than not, your customers, because they've been working with you the whole way along, are going to get claims paid if they do have a ransomware attack, if something goes wrong, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We look to put our policyholders in the best position possible to, first of all, reduce the frequency and severity of that claim from even occurring, right? But in the event that it does occur, we would be ready to respond appropriately with our claims team.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. That makes a ton of sense. So let's talk about specifics. Up until now, we've been talking about, how hard it is to get insurance and sort of what Cowbell brings to the table to help, especially small and medium enterprises, be in a better position. What are the kinds of controls, Manu, can you talk us through that you specifically recommend that organizations adopt?
Yeah, I think across the insurance industry, you'll see various security controls that every carrier is looking for. We know MFA being on top of that list, so multi-factor authentication. Are you applying it on remote access points into the network, as well as for VPN purposes? Are you applying multi-factor authentication on email accounts for all users within the organization? And then are you applying multi-factor authentication for mission critical applications? So any application or cloud-based application that may be deemed vital to the organization's continued operations, we would want to see MFA on the access points to those applications as well. These applications tend to house a lot of sensitive information or confidential information to the organization. Sometimes it could also be any personally identifiable information, protected health information, or payment card information as well, and any other intellectual property that the organization would deem as confidential. So that's one. Having an
But
incident
let's
response.
dig into that. Let's dig into that a little bit more. I'm kind of interested, Manu, because the the conversation a lot of times is around ransomware, and obviously, immutable backups from Veeam and immutable backup capabilities from a lot of our storage partners help with that. But that's not the only kind of cyber claim that can happen, right? There's data breaches and possible exposure on the dark web. There's business email compromise, and I'm sure that that's the kind of issues that you're with these multi-factor authentication controls trying to guard against as well, in addition to ransomware, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned business email compromise. The number one way to stop a business email compromise is to have MFA enabled on those email user accounts. So that could also go into the various types of phishing attempts that may look to deploy ransomware or attempt a wire transfer fraud. Multi-factor authentication will stop all those types of incidents from occurring. So it's by far the number one security control that we look for.
Awesome.
Um,
Now, let's pause for just a quick second more, Manu, because I think we have some more folks who have joined us on the map. Let's take a look. And we have added Europe. It looks like we have the UK online with us now. So welcome. Thank you for joining. I know from talking with customers of Veeam's in the UK and in Ireland recently, this is a very live issue in the UK as well. And we have also been joined by folks in Romania and Turkey. So thanks again to everybody for joining us this afternoon from Romania and Turkey. Okay, Mano, so let's go back to the security controls. Multi-factor authentication, obviously a huge one. What else do you look for?
Yeah. So certainly being proactive in your approach to responding to an incident is important. So incident response plans, and then also security awareness training for employees, helping them identify what's really at risk with cyber threats, how to identify social engineering attempts, particularly phishing on your emails, and then going into backups. I think that's right up there next to multi-factor authentication. So having immutable backups, having backups and testing those backups regularly is important. So, a business data backup solution is a critical step in preventing data loss from cyber attacks. You mentioned ransomware, accidental file deletion, and other threats. It's if your business data is not well backed up, recovering it after a threat occurs could be impossible or extremely challenging, and then time consuming, and also cost the organization a lots of money there, right? So an organization needs to consider how often it does data backups. Other important factors are where and how they store those backups, recovery methods, and how long they should retain those stored backups when it comes to an excellent backup strategy. So those are all things that they should be thinking about. And these factors, they highly depend on the unique needs of the organization everyone has a different IT infrastructure and different requirements for their business needs. So nonetheless, there are general guidelines that every business needs to follow. So when you adhere to these guidelines, which I'll mention right now, you'll ensure that your data is adequately protected. So, in the case of a disaster or a ransomware event occurring, you're able to quickly recover from your backups in a simple fashion. So those guidelines that I'm talking about here, Jeff. So one would be to have frequent data backups, right? So the rule of thumb regarding data backups is to perform them frequently with short intervals between instances. So the standard practice is to have it done daily or several days a week. So those organizations that deal in, mission critical data should conduct backups in real time and then use tools that can automatically do the backup. We know that Veeam Backup Solution does real-time backups at a regular frequency, so that's certainly a good solution to consider. The next one would be prioritize sensitive data. So while a business it doesn't have to lose even the smallest amount of data, sometimes it's okay to decide how much work you risk losing, and accordingly set your data backup schedules that way. So every business critical data asset, whether it's databases and accounting files, you should have these files up and running in a meaningful fashion, and you should have them backed up on a daily basis. For nonprofit organizations,
it's kind of a common saying that if everything's critical, nothing is. And I know, and I'm sure that you've seen this in the past, Manu, that the hurdle of conducting a proper business impact analysis, engaging what are really the crown jewels of my organization, what do I need to protect the most, and what could I deal with losing if the worst happened. It sounds like interacting with Cowbell and getting these controls in place is a good forcing function to get folks to do that, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think just other controls that we could mention here, moving towards offsite storage backups, right? Even if you're not following the 3-2-1 method to back up your data to a single site, you must consider things like offsite storage. So, offsite storage, that could also be, a physical server located away from your business premises or a cloud-based platform. So offsite storage offers you a significant advantage, really, if a natural disaster was to compromise your central server. So in case of an event or an incident, your offsite backup will be ready to utilize. And I think there's one more there I wanted to talk to, and that was the encryption of backups and data. So other than a platform for data backup, data encryption is also vital. So ensure you keep the backed up data in encrypted format as an extra layer of security. So such files, they'll stay protected against corruption or theft. There will be no issue if the business wants to recover that encrypted file, right? So the data integrity is still there. So your data backup partner or your IT admin can advise on which data your organization should be encrypting and which one not to, and then also if it's even worth encrypting at all.
Makes a ton of sense. So let me jump in. Let me jump in real quickly because we have actually got some good comments from folks who are watching the broadcast live today. Thanks to Ernesto, who agrees completely based on his experience that there is a huge gap in security professionals out there. And honestly, hearing about the services that Cowbell offers around this, the fact that you're both doing the insurance function and the security consulting function is very interesting. We also had a question from David on YouTube asking specifically about Veeam implementing multi-factor authentication to work with backup files. And I will say we have a lot of folks who do that already using third-party products, and many of the Veeam interfaces do support MFA. But one of the big pieces of news that's been pretty broadly touted out there and that you can find out more about at our Veeam On conference, which will be coming up in just a few weeks, is that we will also be adding multi-factor authentication to the main Veeam backup and replication console itself. So these are great suggestions, Manu, and we at Veeam have heard them loud and clear. I think this half hour always goes by really quickly. So let me just ask if there was anything that you could recommend just to sum up. How would you like to close things out, Manu? What would you like to tell folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's three things. Again, we touched on those security controls from my perspective. Having multi-factor authentication on all access points is certainly important. I believe our viewers just mentioned having MFA on your backups as well. We know bad actors tend to, they're becoming more sophisticated with their approach, so they're looking to target your backups. So not only is it important to have it offsite and segregated from your network, but also to have your backups enabled with multi-factor authentication. On top of that, just prepare for an incident. Really be proactive with your approach to handling an incident. Look to define your incident response plan with the roles and responsibilities for each one of your internal stakeholders as well as external. And then from there, also define the steps that you're highlighting for preparing, responding to an incident, containing it, eradicating it, recovering. So all that should be defined. You should also look to include various types of incident types in your incident response plan. We know ransomware is the most prevalent type of cyber attack and the one that could possibly do the most damage. So prepare for a ransomware incident and incorporate that into your incident response documentation to effectively respond to an incident. I would say those are some of the best practices and advice I would leave you with.
Thank you so much, Manu. This has been great. I will just let folks know, and I know we have the slide up about Veeam On, but it's just a few weeks away at this point. If you register for Veeam's Veeam On conference before May 1st, you are still eligible to get in the drawing for the custom Veeam sneakers that we will be giving away. We're giving away a lot of those. If you can make it out to Las Vegas, great. The cost is still lower than the full cost. It's discounted now at this point, but the event is free if you want to join virtually. So please do think about that. As long-term viewers of our live webinars know, we do this on a pretty frequent cadence, and we have this coming Thursday for the Asia Pacific region only at 11:30 a.m. Singapore time. Dave Russell and Jason Buffington are going to take a detailed look at the Data Protection Trends Report 2022, and they're going to look at it specifically through the lens of the Asia market and maybe how countries in Asia are experiencing unique challenges or going in unique directions compared to the global results that we got in that survey. This Friday, just one day later, Rick Vanover and Michael Cade will recap Michael's recent 90 days of DevOps that he's been very active posting about and sort of lessons learned from that. And then on Monday, May 2nd, Dave Russell and Jason Buffington will be back with you, and they will take a look at the just published numbers from IDC about the second half of about the market share data for world backup markets for the second half of 2021. So please, Manu, thank you very much for joining today. Really enjoyed this talk, and I expect we might have a longer one coming up. And folks, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for the good questions. It's always a pleasure. And we will see you on Thursday, Friday, and Monday of next week with the shows coming up.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.